Maria Mezzopera.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicolo Mezzopera, but you can call me Nico. First of all, I'm a senior front-end engineer at GitLab. I have more than 7 years of experience, and I'm going to talk about two open source libraries for today, Vue.js Leaflet and Storefront UI. But we are approaching the lunch, you are sitting since a while, so I want to do a little game with everyone. And this goes credit to my good friend Alex Lichter. So please stand up, whoever heard about open source. Really, really. Now, please stay up only who used open source packages in their life. Okay. Okay. Now, please stay up only who contributed to an open source library or package. Okay. And now the final one, please stay up whoever maintains a library. Okay. So this talk is going to be about how I went from the first one who stood up to the last one who stood up. Okay? A little bit more in depth. Vue.js Leaflet, soon to be actually now from yesterday. At Vue Leaflet, we just opened an organization. It's not a very big library, just 1.2K stars, but it has circa 15,000 weekly downloads. This means that when we screw up, we upset a lot of people at once. What this library does is it takes the notorious Leaflet library and wrap it in convenient Vue.js components, so you don't really need to go out of your component flow. You can stay in that mindset. You don't have overhead, and it simplifies greatly the API. So if you want to put 2 markers, it's probably 3 lines of code. The other library that I want to talk about, and this talk takes inspiration from, is Storefront UI. So this is still in beta. It's being finalized soon. Circa 1,000 stars, and it's not yet released. Number 4 on product Ant. For product today, it needs 5 core team members and circa 35 contributors. This library means to be a developer-friendly, reusable component library dedicated to storefronts, so to e-commerce websites. So I told in the beginning that I will tell you how I went from not knowing about open source, okay, I knew about it, and to become a maintainer about it. And the journey started for me exactly how are you right now. I was sitting and enjoying a conference, a very big conference, and while the speaker was talking and they were introducing their work, they were talking about their libraries, I thought to myself, wow, this is awesome. I need to do this as well. And then the next stage is the discovery. You are at work, you're doing your daily job, and now you have a problem. Just to not talk about maps, let's talk about maps. You want to put a nice map on your website, and recently Google Maps changed the API, you don't like them anymore, and so you start looking around. Wow, there is Leaflet, that's an amazing library, but I use Vue.js, that's very complicated to integrate with my component workflow. Okay, but this is this library, Vue Leaflet, and it's actually doing what I need. It's very easy. Awesome, let's use it. It's like, my day is made, I'm in love. And then you roll it out to production, and then you have some doubts because you pass the 11th marker, and the page starts to load very bad. IE5 doesn't want even to open. Firefox says that this is a security vulnerability, but it works really well in Netscape 1.5. And that's, well, I'm a developer. I know how to code. Let's go in the code. I can fix this. And so you dive in the code, you read the documentation, if any. You check the comments. You maybe have to look at commit history to understand what is the direction. You finally find all the bugs, fix them, and make an awesome PR or MR. The PR sits there for a couple of months, and finally the maintainer wake up, it's merged. Wow, I did it. You feel awesome. And then there is the other side of the coin. Now people notice that you did a huge contribution to this library, and so you start receiving emails because the maintainer is just saying, hey, this issue is generated by this guy code. Just let him fix. And then directly the issue gets assigned to you, and then Discord, Slack, Facebook, Twitter, they all become a source for people saying, hey, how can the CSS is not working. Why this is not working? And at some point, you keep contributing, and this it becomes real to you that you are really the maintainer of this open source project now the first time you break something on production and people start screaming at you and you have to do a release 3 a.m. in the night. Well, there is a lot to learn from this process. I made it fun. It sounds like it's a lot of struggles. There is a lot of happiness. We will discuss them later. First, bad spot, and then we finish in a happy way. But the first lesson, let's see what were my expectations in general. What are the expectations when you start writing open source? You will think that you are going to be the Picasso of code. You're going to write the most beautiful code. You will write a lot of code. You will make so many developers happy, and you will praise it. You will be the star of the open source. You will allocate all your free time coding because that's what you enjoy to do. That's what you love to do. And at some point, you will finish this project and say, I'm done. I'm going to move to the next one. Well, let's talk about reality. You will not write the most beautiful code. You will write self-documenting code. You will not write tons of code, but you will write a lot of documentation. Vue.to Leaflet has more documentation than actual code. And in general, all libraries should follow this trend. Grooming issue is the first thing with your coffee. You're scrolling into emails like, this guy is an issue, put a label, this is a question, this is invalid, this I need to fix later on in the day. And endless amount of support requests. So, just a second. Audio. No. Okay. Oh, now I have echo. I'll just play the video and then move back. No. The audio is not doing true. You have the audio connected, right? Yeah. It's still on this. I'll try like this.
Pieces of bread out. Got 'em. Get a butter knife and get some PB. Take one piece of bread, spread it around with the butter knife.
No, Dad, with the peanut butter.
I'm just doing what it says. It says take one piece of bread, spread it around with the butter knife.
Hold on.
Get some jelly, rub it on the other half of the bread.
No, Dad, open the jelly.
Well, it doesn't say to do that. Put the breads together on top of each other. Take a big bite.
Well, this is what look like reading an issue. Well, it's not well written. But this is not the end of it.
2 pieces of bread. Get some peanut butter. Get some jelly. Open the peanut butter. Get a butter knife. Put the butter knife in the peanut butter. Take the butter knife out of the peanut butter.
You did it wrong. No.
This is the other side. It's exactly what happens when a user reads docs that are not well written. So what we want to avoid, let me specify.
Butter.
You did it wrong. No.
So this is exactly what we want to avoid, both when we file an issue towards an open source project, and both when we write our documentation, that somebody which is simply following steps end up frustrated and just abandoning the process. Okay? So how do we do effective communication? And in our case, how do we write documentation? We had API docs, we had example, we had a contribution guide, and this is very important because the contribution guide is what allows you to get more people on board. We have an issue template, we command the code, and we also had quick start guide. All of this needs to be done using a simple and understandable low-context language. What is low context? It means that if you come in and you just know how to read, you don't know anything about what you are talking about, you are still able to understand what I'm telling you through my writing. Okay? This is extremely important, and this is one of the things that you learn the first, well, you just throw yourself out in the field. You will think that you are saying everything and you are saying nothing, and at the same time, you will be, oh no, you're doing it wrong, every time the user tries to explain to you how they're using your software. So, it's important to understand that working on an open source library as a maintainer, you're actually putting on two hats. You are first a maintainer, and that's a very specific role. You are enabling contributor to understand what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. And you're also the guardian of the quality of your code. You also decide the roadmap and the architecture, the overall architecture of your code. You ensure that everything is documented and you don't accept a new feature if it doesn't have documentation. And you also handle the release system. And this is what you do as a maintainer. Then you remove your maintainer hat and you become contributor. Okay? And hopefully in the future, you will probably remove the contributor hat from your wardrobe and you will just be a maintainer. As a contributor, you answer issue, you create issue, you contribute to the docs and the code, you ask questions, and you propose new feature and enhancements. It's important to understand that you are two different roles with two different responsibilities, and your primary role is to be a maintainer. Clearly, you need to code something before being able to accept somebody else's contribution, but as soon as you open your library to the world, it's very important the maintain role is very specified and very clear for you. Okay, did I already say that documentation is important? Do you know what else is important? Any guesses? Yeah, beside communication. Tests. True, that's true. But how do we run those tests? Continuous integration and continuous deployment. Why this is good, we will go through a bit later. Who here doesn't know what is CI/CD? Oh, everybody knows. That's good. Well, and I happen to know about a tool that does the job very well. So, continuous integration, continuous deployment. Well, development as well. Sure, but why? We have two hats, remember? So let's put the maintainer hat. And as a maintainer, CI/CD allow us to focus on only what is ready. The PR is there, the user says ready, you see a bunch of red check marks, like, I'm sorry, this is not ready, move on. You have a bigger margin of safety when you are accepting code and finally merging your code base, that at least your unit tests are passing, and if your unit tests are well engineered, this gives you a very good safety net. And then you can extend further this and say, this PR just changed this aspect of the code, adds new features, okay, it can be a minor release. Oh, this is just a minor fix, it can be a patch. This is a huge breaking change, this is a major, and that the CI will decide for you, prepare your package, and put it out there, and deploy it out there. And lastly, something that is often overlooked, but is seriously time-consuming, which is dependency management. You think that you set up you fix your package number in your package.json, and you release your library, you're done. That's not true. Security vulnerability are now spotted on the day. Both GitHub and GitLab do an amazing job on telling you what is not working properly, and so you need to go and fix it because you're creating an hole for your user. As a contributor, let's put our contributor hat. You're working on the code, and there is something that tells you immediately, look, this is not good enough, you need to fix this, and you know exactly what to do without putting in there, waiting for the maintainer to get to your PR and read it and make some comments. You can also add an auto-generated preview, if, for example, with Storybook that was mentioned before, and so you can actually see immediately the result of your work, even if you don't have a local environment. You can get hints on code quality, for example, with ESLint, mentioned before, or other form of static analysis. And in general, you may have less stress in setting up a local environment that, let's be honest, sometimes is challenging and in more than one case delayed, if not remove the ability of people to contribute to open source software. Okay, I told about self-documenting code. What does it mean? Does it mean that we just add comments to explain what we are doing? Well, not really. Sometimes in our path as developer, we become overly fond of doing beautiful one-liners. I solve everything with one-liner. I'm so cool. My bundle is so small. I'm very happy. It's maybe satisfying to write. You write it on Wednesday. On Friday, you don't understand anything what that code is doing. And so it becomes a hieroglyph soon after. And in general, code that don't tell you up front, look, I'm doing this job, clearly, it's not useful. Who can tell me what this snippet of code does?
It extends the keys of the object.
Correct. It prefixes the keys of the object. But only one answered. This could be split in different functions. It can be more explicit. It could be clear. Instead, we are basically saying, I'm very cool. I know how to use reduce and how to use the literal templates and spreading. OK, so this talk is like building a Vue.js open source library. Why Vue.js? Why I'm stressing Vue.js? Because Vue is inclusive. By design, the framework is able to accommodate the needs of somebody who has not much experience and somebody who has a lot of experience and wants to do powerful things. And they not just be accommodated in the same framework, they can actually work on the same piece of code, both having advantage of that. So you have a very simple template syntax that is very, very close to how HTML is, or you can have render function, very complex abstract function that do very powerful thing. And so bringing in all these people in the same code base help the code move forward. And eventually, those inexperienced developers, they become experienced developers, and they can contribute even more. And the other reason is that the Vue.js community is awesome. So I took the liberty of putting here some faces. So this is by no means the few Vue.js community. This is from my experience. Those are the people that guided me and being friends and companion in this journey, from not knowing a thing of how to do open source to run more than 2 libraries. You can see them. You can see their tag. By any means, follow them. One of them is here. You can guess who. It's, I'm sure that if you have a problem, if there are tons of content that they produced, or they're even able to address some of your questions. I did ask their permission before say so. OK, so up until now, I gave you some tips. I told you how bad is open source maintainer. Well, it's actually very awesome. Why? In my journey, I definitely become a better developer. Another thing that I didn't know I would acquire as an open source contributor and then maintain is that I became a better problem solver, because sometimes for compatibility reason, for backwards compatibility reason, you can't solve a problem in the most obvious way. You need to always keep in mind that people are using it in production, and you can't break stuff for them. You can't always go in with a sword and cut the code and rebuild it from scratch. Also, you have an open and clear portfolio. Everybody can open your commit history and say, hey, I like how this guy works. Hey, he works on very cool project. He knows how to write his code, and you don't need to prove anything to anybody. It's just there. It's your work. Friends. I actually discovered a lot of friends in this community. Network, because people that does open source tend to easily network with each other because you have a common passion, you have common problems to solve, and so it's easier to talk with each other. And satisfaction. In my career as open source maintainer, I received emails telling me, thank you very much for your project. It helped us deliver this app on production. This is the app. Look at it. Thank you. And it does feel awesome. OK, so I want to show you a timeline of the last 2 years of my life as a developer. I started working on open source after going to a very big conference. At some point, my effort in the community got recognized. And that led to organize the Vue.js meetup and speaking it. meetup experience in speaking brought me to be a conference speaker. And then I started mentoring. And then I started working for GitLab, which I consider a very good milestone. None of this would have happened without open source. Why? Because it gave me more skills, because it gave me more confidence, because it gave me, it shifted my focus from the code to the people. And because in the time, I built a portfolio that let me show my skill without even need to talk about them. So, we are almost there. What is the recipe for success? Of course, I wrote it down, but I would like you to tell me. So what are the elements to write cool open source software? Documentation. Then? Sorry? Passion. Correct? Then? Readable code. We can add it to the documentation. Friends. Sure, that's true. CI/CD. Okay. And there is one concept that, another concept that we talked about.
Communication.
Said, but true? Said, not said. Supportable. As well. Another key concept. Maybe I didn't stress it enough, so we go back and talk about that. CI/CD. Okay. And also, well, write cool software. Nobody wants to use software that doesn't look good. Document your code. Set up CI/CD. Remember to be a maintainer and a contributor. I won't stress this enough. This is very important. It's not the same job. Okay? Be kind and a good communicator. You have time for questions, right?
Yeah, you have 5 more minutes.
Okay, questions?
Yeah, I have so one issue that I've had with documentation, so you said when you document, a lot of times it's like never enough, right? Like you document, you think you've done so much, and yet users go out there and do stupid things. So you want to document more, but at the same time, there's a problem where when there's too much documentation, you create clutter. So how do you find the right balance between, giving them, like a terse, quick, here's how you do it, go code, versus giving them a book? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes. So there are different approaches depending on what software you're documenting. For me, the hardest was to document Vue.2 leaflet because it has an extensive and difficult API, and it also you need some key concept from the main library to be able to deal with it precisely. So the best approach in this case, extensively document your API, props and events, so make it clear what is happening and possibly link to the original documentation when this is appropriate. And then tons of examples the example is like a live thing that lives on its own because user will start asking questions and you will need to take those and build an example out of those. And also FAQ, which are not very common, but it helps isolate the use case. For example, some of our users kept forgetting adding the CSS from the system, even though it's in the quick start, in the documentation, in the README file, it's everywhere. And so there is a flag that says, my app doesn't render, add the CSS. Any other question? Yes?
How do you pick a project to start?
That's a nice question. Usually, for my experience, you end up maintaining stuff that you need for work. You need to put a map in your website, and you find the library, and then you decide that you work on it. Sometimes you have cool ideas. For example, I tend to write a library to interface with Vue.js. I needed to use Excels, and so I have a library that parses Excels. I needed to get the geolocation of the user, so I have a library that takes the location of the user and put it in Vuex, so that in time I can just reuse them. They start as something that you need, or something that you think it's cool, and then when you think it's good enough, why not put it out there?
Can you speak about how you handle to-dos accumulating in a code base over time, especially in open source? This can happen quite a lot.
Well, we don't merge PR with to-dos. I don't. It's unmanageable.
How do you manage the chat communities? I mean, with Twitter, GitHub, Discord, Slack.
So you start and you are very eager to answer everybody, and then it results on you being on your couch browsing Netflix and receive a Discord message that says your library is not optimized, and that's the point when you just stop. You try to be there, but it's physically not possible. And what is important to understand is that your time is limited. You don't have your whole life for open source. What brings more value? That you answer the same question over and over, or that you make more documentation and just, here's the link.
Last question. How do you prevent, or have you come close to burnout because of that issue with wanting to be everywhere? How do you prevent that?
There is a thing called maintainer guild that I purposely left outside of the talk, but this is so most open source run on maintainer guild, where it's not fun anymore for the maintainer to work on it. They just feel obliged to move stuff forward because there are dependencies, because it's their project. There are several ways to avoid this, and I think the most important thing is to be clear and say, I'm sorry, I can't get to this. I know that doesn't work for you. I will have time in 3 weeks. If not, please fix it and we will talk about it.
Which project management strategy do you prefer to use?
For open source library. Well, you end up running everything on issue. If you're working with a team, then it's about team decision. Usually you want to keep everything in one single place, so issue on GitHub or GitLab, they are a good place. Of course, if you have a team, you will pair a chat, and nowadays it's usually either Slack or Discord. Okay. Thank you.